Welcome, and thank you for joining this session of Innovation Institute 2021. With nearly 50 sessions available through the summer, we know you'll be discovering new skills, strategies, and resources to transform the teaching and learning in your classroom, and we would love to hear from you. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to visit the Town Hall in Attendify to connect with the attendees through the activity stream or community features. If you would like a certificate of attendance for attending this session, you will find the request form linked at the end of the session description in Attendify. Thank you, and enjoy this session from one of our amazing Innovation Institute presenters.
Okay, everyone, welcome to this PD session on choice boards and learning menus. I hope you're enjoying the virtual conference so far. This one's superior. This session's superior because we actually have snacks. Okay, you can't really have a good, PD session without snacks. So enjoy that. I got a QR code if you want to scan that with your mobile device. There's also a bit.ly link here in the bottom right that can take you to this presentation, which you will want because there's lots of links to templates, websites, and resources where you can use some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about. So this is a 30-minute PD session, but you can extend this for yourself if you pause it and spend some time to explore some of the templates and websites. You can also extend this if you're with some colleagues and want to stop and discuss. So I'm just putting that in your minds. If you're an administrator or instructional facilitator, you want to use this for some PD in your building, go ahead and do that. And you can extend this to be 1 hour, hour and a half, 2 hour, whatever you want, because this is just kind of the bare bones, this 30-minute PD. And if you're a teacher, you can extend this for yourself, your own professional learning, and put that in your PD record. So moving on, my name's Ben Legrone. I'm an instructional specialist at Springdale Schools, and I work primarily with K-12 social studies, but also do a lot of professional development on project-based learning and tech tools and just innovative stuff like that. So these are some of my passions that I'm going to be talking about today. Let's get started. So why use student choice in our classrooms? Like why is this even important? If you're with your colleagues, I want you to go ahead and pause and discuss this question together. Why use student choice in your classroom? Hope you had a good time of discussing that. So moving on, let's think about this together. Okay, why use student choice? The number one reason I think of is just engagement. You're more invested or engaged in something as a human being if you have some kind of choice in the matter. And that is true for adults, not just students. If you think about this PD, if you were presented with a PD conference where you had to, every session was scripted out for you and you had to go to certain ones, you had no choice in the matter, probably wouldn't be a very popular conference. That engages us, and that's important for our learning as adults as it is for students. And think about how little choice students have K through 12. Every day, things are just scripted out for them, and it doesn't build any sort of independence or reflection on what they might need or want as a learner. And so choice is important for them to get engaged and also get them invested in their own learning process. Again, it's human nature. It's not just students. So I hope you can agree, like, it's really important to have choice to engage our students. However, there's always issues with anything we try to implement in school. So I want you to discuss this next question. And if you're alone, you're just going to kind of think to yourself or talk with your dog. What are some pitfalls of student choice? We want more choice. I hope everybody would agree with that. But what are some pitfalls for that? Not just for the student, but for you as the teacher. What are some pitfalls? Go ahead and pause and discuss some of that with your team. Okay, hope you had a good time discussing that question. What are some pitfalls of student choice? Whenever I was trying to incorporate more choice as a teacher, I know there's pitfalls of how do you assess when everybody's doing different things or they chose different routes in their learning? Like, how do you really assess that and score it and grade it and all that? There's also like, how do you make sure things are equal or even, or that all students are being challenged, or instead of them just maybe choosing the easiest thing, because that is kind of human nature too. We like to choose the easiest thing, especially if it's a subject that we really don't like. So that's a pitfall. Another pitfall is just the planning, the organization that goes into incorporating student choice, because it's easy to plan just for one activity, one, text, one, project. But when you have to come up with different options for kids, it takes time. So that is a pitfall. So those are things that are important to consider, to know there's no silver bullet, but those are just things you just got to work through and think through. And that, to me, is the joy of teaching and being innovative, is coming up with ideas to overcome those pitfalls, which you can. Today, we're going to be looking at some structures that I think are going to give you some ideas of how to overcome some of those pitfalls. But first, I want to lay out this topic about choice, because it falls under differentiation. I wanted to briefly go over differentiation 101. When we think about differentiating our lessons or our instruction, it comes in basically two categories: changing up the process for what students are going to learn or how they learn it. That's the process of the learning. Or the product. That's just how they show you what they learned or what they actually make or produce. So again, there's different types of differentiation. They all fall under process, what the kid's learning, how they're learning it, or product, how they are showing what they learn. When you think about incorporating choice, think about it through those lenses. When you're planning a lesson, a unit, think about, is there any way that I can allow choice in the process? Maybe they don't need to study every single subtopic in this bigger topic. Maybe they can choose what they learn. Or maybe you want to think about the product. How can I incorporate choice in how the student shows me what they learned? Maybe they don't all just write a paragraph. Maybe they don't all just, shoot a video. Maybe they don't all just make a Google Slides. Maybe they get some choice in what they produce. That's the heart of all this, is coming down to how you can change up the process and or the product so students have choice. As far as terminology, in most cases, a learning menu and a choice board are the same thing. Most people call them the same thing when you hear that. And it gets confusing because you're like, what's a choice board and a learning menu? What's the difference? Most people, the terms are interchangeable. However, in some circles, and sometimes even when I'm trying to plan, some people might consider a learning menu more about the process. Maybe they're choosing, different topics to study within a larger topic. So there might be different processes and different products. And a choice board in some cases might just be, it might be similar process. Maybe everybody's studying the same book or working the same, type of equation or problem, but they're showing their work in different ways. Maybe they're producing different products, and a choice board gives them those options. So before I show you some really cool templates, I want to make a note about published Google Slides, because a lot of these templates you're going to get are actually in Google Slides format. To make them super user friendly for your students, after you might take some of these templates and customize them, is you want to publish them to the web. The way you do that is you click File, Publish to Web, and you can set some different parameters. Why not just share the Google Slides themselves with them? View only, because when you publish a Google Slides, it makes it automatically in presentation mode. A student can't get out of it. And why would you want to do that? Well, because you can make elements within your slides, like text or an object, a graphic, you can make them clickable, where they would click on that object. It might take them directly to a specific slide in your presentation with, maybe a learning menu option that you want to include, or it can send them to a different link to a website you want them to research or whatever. But that published Google Slides really allows it to feel more like a website kind of experience versus a Google Slides that's view only, where they've got to put it in presentation mode to experience that clickableness. You know what I'm saying? I really encourage you to try this out, because and you're going to get ideas once you experience some of them in a minute when you look at these templates. But I encourage you to do that, because it's just a really fun, colorful way to make these learning menus, rather than just have a Google Doc with links to stuff. That's fine. I mean, it's functionally, the same, but you're going to see some really cool examples in a minute of teachers that got creative, and it just makes it a much more enjoyable experience for the students. Let's get into the fun stuff. We're just going to, for the rest of this PD, you're going to be looking at just examples of stuff to give you ideas. Pretty fun. Here's an idea of a simple choice board. A Rip Van Winkle choice board. This is if a teacher, was teaching this story and wanted to just allow different product choices for the student to choose on how they can demonstrate their learning. This is just one simple example. They might have a minimum amount of points that you as a student have to, acquire. And this choice board, as you see, the different activities are worth different points, and maybe the students have to figure out, which ones they need to do to make sure they get the minimum points. Pretty simple and straightforward, right? So that's just one idea, a very simple way of students having choice in the product that they produce to demonstrate their learning. Next example. This is a really cool bingo model. This is really popular in learning menus. So this is a novel study. So this class might have studied the same novel. They might have studied different novels. Regardless, this teacher made this bingo board where all students are required to do the star, the one in the middle. All students, and that's where they start. They're required to write a one-paragraph summary of the novel, share on a slide in a collaborative slide deck, add an image of the book cover and links to your other two projects, which they're going to be doing in the rest of this learning menu. So everybody's required to do that. You might make a baseline with something like that, a required product. All these others are, they get to choose. And you might make the one really heavily graded product just that middle one. And that's to give you the data you want as a teacher. And the others, you might view them more as learning activities than like just assessments. They might just be further ways for them to deepen their understanding of the novel. So please keep in mind that a learning menu or choice board, it can be about the learning and not just about assessment, or both. It's about the students deepening their understanding. It's not just about you getting more things turned in so you can grade. Sometimes we get hung up on the grading and the assessing when you need to be free to just grade what you want to grade, assess what you want to assess. And maybe some of the stuff's not graded. Maybe it's, done collaboratively. Maybe it is graded, but graded differently than like the core assessment that you're really wanting to pull student data from. So anyway, I love the bingo board. I know this teacher that created this. She has an awesome blog, and she requires them to pick one blue and one yellow. And that way they're diversifying the types of stuff that the kids are producing. So on the left, you could see some links for you. I have a link to the templates. So they're actual like Google Doc or Google Slides templates that you can go ahead and use. Or the make a copy links go straight to the slides or doc and forces you to make a copy. So you can own it yourself. Alrighty. I got inspired by that previous one, and I went ahead and made my own in a lesson I did a couple of years ago with some teachers here in Springdale on child labor. So we were learning about child labor, and this was very much a learning menu, meaning I introduced the topic in a mini lesson, and then we didn't really study it together deeper than that mini lesson. I let them go explore and learn more about child labor. And so what I did is I required them all to do a red one and a blue one. The red ones are articles, so they all had a text. And then the blue ones were maps. So I wanted them all to practice some map skills, and they all had to do that. And then instead of the novel study example where they did the starred one at the beginning, I made the students do the starred one at the end. So that was, to me, the star, the middle column, middle box was the culminating product, like how they would show their learning at the end of this, uh, child labor lesson. So they all had to create like an infographic that addressed the question, what would you do to stop child labor if you were given $100 million? Like, what would you do? And I prefaced that and gave a little more explanation on different examples of what students might want to do. So they created an infographic on, they wrote a paragraph on how they could address that. I'm thinking of I did another similar thing where they created an infographic with a learning menu. But the point is, they all did like the same end product, but they chose a different learning pathway to get there. Okay, here's another learning menu that I made years ago. And this is, years ago, the learning menu thing, this trend started out with like this restaurant theme. So years ago, people were doing a lot of stuff with like appetizers, main dish, and desserts. And that's what I did as well. So I had an appetizer, which was, it was the same, all the kids were given like the same text, but there were different activities that they could do to kind of get warmed up. And they were all kind of like DOK1 level knowledge building type activities. And then for the main dish, I chose different activities that they could choose from, and they all went a lot deeper. One's a web quest. Some of them are a little more argument based, little more just deep diving into more, history and background. And this was really cool, and it turned out really well because teaching the judicial branch, like just at face value, can be kind of boring. Teaching to students, if you're just trying to get across like the basic structure and try to get them some more depth, it can be boring. So I wanted to just kind of get the overall gist of it with the appetizer, and then they get to explore some deeper topics. And then if they got done early enough, and I think this lasted like 2 or 3 days, I had some dessert options where they could choose a different dessert, which was a game on this website called iCivics. They have these really cool civics based video games. And so that was the dessert. So there was some motivation and an incentive to get to the dessert. And a lot of the students did. And what's cool about learning menus and choice boards is it allowed me actually time to work with students that were struggling and that needed more time, because these other students were working on the dessert and learning a lot in the dessert. It was legit learning experience. But I love structures that allow me to differentiate like this because I can work with students and go deeper. Okay, here's another restaurant themed learning menu. And this is, or a choice board, whatever you want to call it. This was a teacher in Texas that made this for a digital learning menu, is what he called it, for student creation. So students would, choose different type of digital products to demonstrate their learning um, inside this menu. And teachers use this also to teach different tech tools for students, to expose them to different types of things. Because, students, they in the Google world, everybody's using Google these days. Everybody's making Google slides. It's the easiest thing to make. Well, when you're making a Google slide in like every class since like second grade, third grade, it just kind of gets old. So this is a good tool to be able to introduce students to some different options. And like those previous examples, there's links at the bottom for you to get the template or make a copy and own it yourself. Here's another cool tech tool choice board dealing with digital learning, where this teacher made a Fortnite theme, which is just fun. It's like, yeah, the kid knows he's not playing Fortnite. It's not the same thing, but it's just a way to relate to kids and to be a little bit more engaging. And so this teacher put different type of tools with different color rings. So they drop in the game Fortnite, you drop into the map. So they're dropping into these different tools that they're going to check out and learn about. Links at the bottom if you want to own that. This is a really cool learning menu that I'm a big fan of because it's based on the 4 C's. And if you don't know what the 4 C's are, in some circles there's 5 C's or 6 C's, but it's basically these 21st century skills like communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity. So these are some ideas of how you can build those different skills inside of your students. And um, I like this learning menu because some of these are like standalone activities, like just design to build those certain skills. But some of them you can kind of plug into some of the content that you're teaching throughout the week. Links at the bottom. Here's a really cool choice board template where this is from a math teacher, and they're going over a certain problem or unit, and there's different choices on how the student can be assessed, explore the problem deeper. And so this is a Google Slides template that whenever it's shared with the students, they can just click on, one of those boxes, and it takes them straight to um, the different options. And there's just like 2 options in each of those. So it's real straightforward and simple, and it shows you don't have to have something like super complex. Here's the next choice board template. I love this theme. It's really fun. This is a cinema theme choice board. So I love when teachers are creative and just do different themes, just kind of make it cool. I'm not good at making this kind of stuff. That's why I really like it when I come across this stuff. So, the first slide, this is a Google Slides, is like the teacher and, welcome to my cinema. And the next slide is that next yellow one that says get your ticket. And they choose these different type of activities that take them straight to the instructions. So all those, the red, green, orange, blue, those slides are instructions for that activity, takes them straight to it. It's just a fun way for them to choose the different activities instead of just handing out a bullet point list to kids. Makes it a little more jazzy. Here's another fun Mandalorian themed choice board. I love the show The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. So apparently this teacher did too. They made this slides template where students can, basically just pick a number and it takes them to a different activity they get to choose. And the other slides in the rest of this slide deck are decorated in Mandalorian theme as well. Okay, this came out of, I found this on a blog, and this was one English teacher that had used their poetry unit. They had used a previous poetry unit and now they wanted to incorporate more choice. So they studied poetry together as a class, and they're all exploring this essential question: how do poets express them? There's a themes of self and identity. How do poets express themes of self and identity? And then there's just a myriad. There's a lot more than just this little screenshot I took of different activities that the students can do based on poetry. The reason I love this, guys, is because I personally I wasn't really into poetry when I was in school. Like I like appreciated it, but I didn't really get it. It was just hard for me to understand it. And when I was forced to kind of go through these poetry units, I just remember being really bored. But if I was introduced with this, like I could see myself just perusing it as a student and, checking out things that might interest me. Oh, it's like, oh, cool. Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton, the play Hamilton. I love Hamilton. I might want to check that out. And so I'm able to choose stuff that's personal to me. And that immediately makes poetry more personalized. And isn't that the goal? The goal is for the students to make connections with their own lives about something, like poetry and all the things they're learning. So this teacher did a great job with all these different activities. And it's just pretty straight up simple, just a grid of different activities they can choose from. If you go check out that poetry unit, if you're an ELA teacher, you'll find some more examples. Here's another similar one from an ELA teacher: dystopian reading quest. I just love the even calling it a reading quest, not learning menu. A learning menu to student probably isn't like, the most attractive, term, but reading quest, like that's kind of cool. And this teacher has some of these are required activities, and then some of them are optional. And there's another page if you go to the unit that it kind of explains the directions, but it's really cool. It's got this theme about um, imagine a world where information's used as a form of control and books and knowledge are guarded by the powerful few. And so they're going through this reading quest to learn about dystopia, and in kind of like a fun, almost like video game, board gamey kind of way. It's kind of neat. This is another type, you could say, of a choice board, but it's a choose your own adventure. I don't know if you've ever done these in schools, but there are some curriculum books I know in history, that because I'm a history teacher, where students can go through history and have choose your own adventures, or like they're they're immersed inside of a historical context, and they're faced with choices, and those different choices affect some outcomes, moving forward. And it's almost like you can choose your own path through the history. Well, there's ways to actually create these in Google Forms, And this blog and this planning guide can show you how to do that. But also, not only you as a teacher could maybe choose these as a fun way for students to kind of navigate through content, but students can create their own. And that's actually what this screenshot is of a fun little choose your own adventure that a student created. And that's what the blog is actually about. Students, this came from a math teacher, students working on certain, in a unit, certain equations and concepts, and they design a choose your own adventure. They have to come up with a story. It's just a more fun way for them to have other students. So they would have other students go through that and learn some of the concepts through something they created. And we all know as teachers, when you're creating and teaching stuff on your own, you learn a lot about the content. So I think this is a really cool way to incorporate choice and creativity, especially in math. That sometimes it's hard to think of those ways to integrate literacy, and this is a cool way. They're writing a story and learning math as they're doing it. So this comes toward the end. So in Springdale, we have our own tech tool choice board, and this is something that me and our tech integration specialist, Laura Bishop, co-designed a few years ago. And it's just a holding place for some different tech tools that you can send to your students. So it's an organized menu that students can use to help select a tech tool for a given assignment or project. And the way you can use this is you can share the whole presentation with them. And I'm about to give you the link here in a second. It's a published Google Slides presentation, so it's very clickable. But you could also take out certain slides of it and just limit their choices to certain categories. Like there's categories for website builders and just graphic organizers. And in this case, on the screenshot, social media templates. So you might be teaching something in history and you have students choose a leader from the Civil War and they've got to create a social media template, based on that person or a conversation between that person and another historical figure. And that, limits their choices to just that category, which also can be good for assessing because you can use the same rubric for all of it, and how they demonstrate, the historical topic and understanding, even though they might all have a different product. So you can link this into Google Classroom. You can keep it and refer to it throughout the year. And you can make your own copy of it if you want to customize. But there's where you can find it. It's bit.ly Tech Tool Choice Board. That is case sensitive, by the way. That takes you to the published Google Slides, and there should be a link down there where you can make it your own as well. And here are some sources that I've actually linked most of the stuff throughout the presentation. So I hope this has helped you in these templates, give you some ideas, help you brainstorm of ways you can incorporate more choice in your classroom. And I just want to say one thing, that doing this kind of stuff requires more time and planning on the front end, but it's so worth it because this type of stuff allows you to actually differentiate, to actually spend time coaching students and working through the work as they're doing it, instead of you being bogged down in your day-to-day planning. When you plan this stuff on the front end, it allows you to really kind of set things on autopilot and then watch them work and get involved. And you're able to, intervene and help students as they're learning. So that's one of my favorite aspects of learning menus, choice boards. And if you want to know more, please reach out. I would love to share. Hope you have a great
Thank you
summer.
for joining this session. To request a certificate of attendance, you can access the link at the bottom of the session description, scan the QR code here, or go to bit.ly/I2 certificate. Bit.ly shorteners are case sensitive, so please be sure to use all uppercase letters. Hear what insight other I2 attendees and presenters might have on this session and other breakout sessions by connecting with the Innovation Institute community on Facebook or Twitter at I2 Esdale or in Attendify's interactive features. And don't forget to mark your calendar for June 8th and 9th to join us for I2 2022. Thank you.